that are causing such destruction, and yet they seem only to increase rather than to stop. When man creates, he achieves so much, and when man destroys, he destroys so much. This is, I think, the biggest sadness of our time, that if we go back to being people who create and work for things rather than people who destroy, then things would be in a better state. And when I say create, I mean working for things, obviously, not to be confused with God's creation. On this theme, I want to touch today upon a topic which I introduced in the Eid Khutbah, which is the topic of social assistance, helping those in need, the concept of helping the community, which is an integral part of our religion. And I mentioned that these two pillars, worship of Allah and assistance of His community, are integrally linked in our religion on the day of Eid. So I want to talk further about this topic today. So today, inshallah, first of all, I will talk about some verses from Surah Al-Dhariyat, and this is chapter 51 of the Quran, and then inshallah we'll look at some verses from Surat Al-Dahr in particular, which is chapter 76 of the Holy Quran. I'll give you the verse references as we speak. So first of all, turning to Surat Al-Dhariyat and verses 16 to 19. Surat Al-Dhariyat, chapter 51, verses 16 to 19. And here and again in the next surah, we see that this latter portion of the Quran talks a lot about heaven and hell. And if you like, the Quran has different emphasis throughout its different stages. In the beginning of the Quran, we see a lot of discussion of legislation and rulings in the Medinan surahs, the lengthy Medinan surahs. This latter part of the Quran contains shorter surahs and a greater proportion of Meccan surahs and Meccan content, which is talking about the Day of Judgment and trying to emphasize to the disbelievers how urgent the need is for them to take account of their situation and change their behavior and change their beliefs before the Day of Judgment arrives, and they will have outcomes which are dependent upon their actions and their choices in this world. And that's why it talks a lot about Jannah and Nar here, that your actions here will have consequences in the hereafter. And this sense of urgency is built up by these shorter surahs with their strong rhythmic content as well. There's a strong rhythmic content which contains a sense of urgency. Stylistically, it creates a sense of urgency, drawing people's attention to the imminence of the Day of Judgment. So here, Allah Ta'ala takes a number of oaths in this surah. وَالذَّارِيَاتِ ذَرْوًا, by taking first of all an oath by the winds which scatter the clouds. And this natural phenomena, taking oaths by natural phenomena, indicates the Day of Judgment and how everything will be turned on its head. We have the sun rising from the opposite direction. We have mountains turned to dust and floating like clouds. Everything will be turned upside down in turmoil. So these natural phenomena and the dispersal of clouds through the winds is an oath which signifies how this world of ours will be destroyed and dispersed and scattered on the Day of Judgment. And then he begins to talk about the outcomes of the Day of Judgment. And so he says, وَإِنَّ الدِّينَ لَوَاقِعٌ, the Day of Judgment is sure to come. After these oaths, he says, إِنَّمَا تُوعَدُونَ لَصَادِقٌ وَإِنَّ الدِّينَ لَوَاقِعٌ. What you have been promised is true, and the Day of Judgment is sure to come. And then after that, he mentions the people who are still in a state of disbelief and heedlessness. And he says, he describes that what their fate will be on the Day of Judgment. يَوْمَهُمْ عَلَى النَّارِ يُفْتَنُونَ. On that day they will be in the fire. ذُوقُوا فِتْنَتَكُمْ. Taste your punishment. هَذَا الَّذِي كُنْتُمْ بِهِ تَسْتَعْجِلُونَ. This is what you were hastening. You were saying, bring it on, bring it on. And now you are in the midst of it. And what have you got to say now? So he mentions first of all those people who denied the Day of Judgment. And then, after this, he turns to the people of Jannah. And it is interesting here how within this dialogue and this description of Jannah, Allah Ta'ala now draws our attention to what behavior it was of theirs, which made them into people of Jannah. He could have just said, the day of judgment will come, this is the state of the people in Nar, this is the state of the people in Jannah. But he talked about how the people who disbelieved in the day of judgment are finding themselves now, facing the reality of hell. And then he talks about the people of Jannah. And then he mentions, in the midst of this description, what the conduct was they engaged in, which made them into people of Jannah. He says, إِنَّ الْمُتَّقِينَ فِي جَنَّاتٍ وَعُيُونٍ, verse 15. Surely the people of taqwa, the muttaqeen, will be in gardens with springs, uyun, ayn. Ayn means eye in Arabic, and it also means a spring. And interestingly, you see in the eye we have tear ducts. So we have water springs from the eyes. So in Arabic we have these kind of connections, that water springs from the eyes, it's ayn. And water springs from the ground, it's ayn. So there are linguistic similarities in how these words are derived. They will be in gardens and with water emerging, springs of water. And this conjures up an image of freshness, abundance, and rizq, beneficence, that Allah has given this supply of water. With water brings life. It brings greenery and growth and abundance, and it irrigates and it provides, quenches the thirst. So this is already a sense of refreshment. Even the sound of water is very refreshing, very calming, very soothing. So as soon as Allah Ta'ala mentions that, every time He mentions تَجْرِي مِن تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارُ, below it rivers will flow, it indicates the freshness, the satisfaction, the contentment, the peacefulness, and the abundant provision, the sense of life and vitality which you will find in Jannah. And then he says the people of Jannah will be receiving. Look at this word. He begins their description with this word, آخِذِينَ. They will be taking. So after mentioning Jannah, he says the people of Jannah will be taking. آخِذِينَ. It's the first word. And the sentences in Arabic can be played around with. Sometimes you can put the subject of the sentence first. Sometimes the verb comes first. Sometimes here we have the state of these people. That what is they're described as in a file here, that they are, what is their state and what are they doing? What is the action that they are doing? What is the state in which we find them in? آخِذِينَ. We find them taking. They are takers here. In Jannah they are takers. آخِذِينَ مَا آتَاهُمْ رَبُّهُمْ. They are takers of what their Lord is giving to them. They are takers in Jannah. He explains, إِنَّهُمْ كَانُوا قَبْلَ ذَلِكَ مُحْسِنِينَ. They are people who before this were people who were muhsineen. They were people of ihsan. They earned this. Their behavior was such, they used to do ihsan. And now they are taking, they are now receiving. So this is their reward. They are being rewarded for something that they used to do. What does it mean? Muhsineen, it's a comprehensive term. It's one term which describes these people. What does he mean by it? He said they got their reward for being muhsineen. And then he explains muhsineen now. So we have these parenthetical explanations. You see how the narrative is. First he mentions Jannah, then he goes on to the people of Jannah. And then he says they are takers. Why are they takers? Because they are muhsineen. What does muhsineen mean? Now he opens up the narrative again. He tells us now what this means. Now he's describing the conduct of people, what they did before, قَبْلَ ذَلِكَ, what they did before on earth, to make them be takers in Jannah. Why are they receiving in Jannah? Because of what they did before, the ihsan. Okay, what is it? كَانُوا قَلِيلًا مِنَ اللَّيْلِ مَا يَحْجَؤُونَ. They only used to sleep a little at night. كَانُوا قَلِيلًا مِنَ اللَّيْلِ مَا يَحْجَؤُونَ. قَلِيلًا is the first word here. Very little they used to sleep at night. وَبِالْأَسْحَارِ هُمْ يَسْتَغْفِرُونَ. And at the time of suhoor, and it's plural here, ashar means all of it means it's a continuous process. Every day at suhoor, or many times at the time of suhoor. Ashar means the dawns, not once. It was their regular conduct. This was something that was habitual for them. وَبِالْأَسْحَارِ هُمْ يَسْتَغْفِرُونَ. They used to ask forgiveness from Allah. Ramadan's blessings is that it turned all of us into people that Allah was pleased with and proud of, inshallah. The rest of the year, we find special people who do these things. But in Ramadan, we find all of the people flocking to the mosque at night, listening to the Quran. We find all of the people waking at the time of suhoor. It changed our behavior, our way of thinking, our priorities and our perspectives, so that we could all partake in this kind of situation for a period of time at least. He said, وَبِالْأَسْحَارِ هُمْ يَسْتَغْفِرُونَ. Sometimes, such as the night, are special. They create a connection between Allah and His people. Because we are free from the worries and the cares of the day. We are not distracted at that time. We're not waking up to go to work like we do in the mornings. We're not busying ourselves for some worldly purpose and then praying along the way. At night, these people are waking up just for the sake of Allah. They are waking up in order to pray. They are waking up in order to remember Allah. So there is sincerity, there is exclusivity. This is dedication and commitment to Allah. They didn't pray along the way. They woke up to pray. And what did they give something up? They sacrificed the rest and the comfort of their beds in order to pray and remember Allah. وَبِالْأَسْحَارِ هُمْ يَسْتَغْفِرُونَ. So they made peace with Allah. Whenever they had offended Him, whatever they had done that contradicted His command, they made up for that by asking Allah to forgive them. So they made peace with Him. Okay, so they were muhsineen because they sacrificed their sleep and they asked forgiveness from Allah, and this was part of their ihsan. Now they are taking from Allah. Is that all they did? That they made peace with Allah? Is that all they did to be muhsineen? Is that why they are receiving? He says a bit more. He says, وَفِي أَمْوَالِهِمْ حَقٌّ لِلسَّائِلِ وَالْمَحْرُومِ وَفِي أَمْوَالِهِمْ حَقٌّ لِلسَّائِلِ وَالْمَحْرُومِ. In their wealth, there was a right, something prescribed, a share that was dedicated for the one who asked and the one who was in need. The sa'il is the one who asked. He did su'al, he asked for them, for something. Wal-mahroom, the one who had been deprived, who was in need and who was deprived. They found a portion in their wealth which they dedicated and they set aside for those in need. It means they were people who gave in this world, and in Jannah they are takers. In this world they were generous. In Jannah Allah is generous to them. In this world they were the ones who gave to the people in need. In Jannah they are the ones who are receiving from Allah. And he says, Wallahu al-ghaniyyu wa antum al-fuqara. That He is the one who is self-sufficient and rich, and you are the ones who are in need. وَفِي أَمْوَالِهِمْ حَقٌّ لِلسَّائِلِ وَالْمَحْرُومِ. So they always had a portion of their wealth set aside for those in need. And I think here that we need to think about what it is that we set aside for Allah. That if He is saying that when we give, He is going to give to us in Jannah. And if we ask Him, when we ask Him for things for this world, even the Prophet ﷺ taught us that when we ask for things for this world as well, ask for goodness from Allah, ask for khair from Allah. Don't ask for trials and tribulations. Ask Allah to protect us from trials and tribulations. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنًا. We want hasana in this world. We want good things in this world too. وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنًا. We want the best in the akhirah as well. When we ask Him for Jannah, we don't ask Allah for the lowest place in Jannah. We ask Him for the highest place in Firdaus. Jannatul Firdaus al-A'la. We ask Him for the highest place. We are taught to ask Him for the highest. But if Allah is going to give us the best, then we have to also give in His sake. For His sake, we have to also give the best. So if Allah has put notes in our pocket, then we shouldn't look for coins. If He has put the highest denomination He has put in your pocket, make it a rule. Whatever you find in your pocket, put the highest denomination in His way. When you give sadaqah, put the highest denomination. If you find in your pockets 50-pound notes, don't look for the 50p. Because He gave you the 50-pound note. Why are you putting the 50p for Allah and keeping the 50 for yourself? I don't mean give your bus fare and look for a lift home. Because the Quran doesn't say that. It says, don't be tight-fisted. Don't hold your head and hand close to your neck and be tight-fisted. But it also said, don't stretch it out so far that you become a beggar and you start asking for people. No. Keep what you need. Keep your bus fare home. But if He has put a wad of 50s in your pocket and you are looking for coins, it's not befitting. If He's put 50s in your pocket, put a 50 in. If He's put 20s there, put a 20 in. If there are 10s there, put a 10-pound note in. Don't look for coins then for the sake of Allah. Look for the highest denomination in your pocket. Look in your bank account. If Allah has given you hundreds of thousands, then you can give in tens of thousands. If He has given you in tens of thousands, then you can give in thousands. If He has given you in thousands, give in hundreds. If He has given you hundreds, give tens. It's not befitting that Allah has made you a millionaire and you're looking for coins to give in His way. We ask for the best, and give the best. He says, لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. In Surat Al-Imran, the beginning of chapter 4 of the Quran, He says, of the fourth juz of the Quran, says, لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ. You will never attain bir. And bir is this quality of human kindness. Human kindness, goodness towards His creation. لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ. You will never. Lan means never, means entire. You go as far as you like in the future, you will never achieve this. لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ. You will never attain piety, حَتَّى until تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. You spend from what you love. Do you really love the coppers in your pocket? Do you really have any attachment to them? Isn't it the 50-pound notes that are really worth something to you? So give something that is worth something, because you want to attain from Allah something that is precious to you. You want to gain something which is precious to you, give something which is precious to you as well. Give the best that you have. With the Sahaba Kiram, there are many, many stories that their wives sometimes would struggle for a long time to save a little bit of money to make a dish which their husbands liked to eat, which was a rare delicacy they were able to put before them. And there would be a knock at the door, and the Sahaba Kiram would take the dish which they liked the most and give it. The wives would ask, why did you have to give this thing which I spent so long preparing? I prepared this because you like it, because you love that thing, that's why I made it for you. And the answer was, that's why I gave it. I didn't want to give something from the table which I don't like. You don't look, when someone is knocking on the door, you don't look on the table and say, well, I don't like this very much, so I'll give that. They wanted to give something they were attached to, something that was precious to them, something that meant something to them, so that they could demonstrate that the love of Allah is greater than their love for things. That giving in His way is more dear to them than the things which are dear of this dunya. You don't prove anything if you give something you are not attached to. You haven't proved anything. What are you entitled to? Give something that you love. What people used to do traditionally as well, they always say that if somebody is good in their education, they say, well, he will be a scientist. Someone is very good in their education, he will be an engineer. And if somebody is not so good in their education, so we'll put him in the madrasa then. This is the traditional story that we hear. I don't know how true this is, but this is the story that we hear. But you remember Sayyidah Maryam, her mother, she said that if I have a child, I will dedicate them to Allah. And then she has Sayyidah Maryam and she dedicates her to Allah, but she is worried that this is a girl and I thought it would be a son. And Allah Ta'ala said, وَلَيْسَ الذَّكَرُ كَالْأُنْثَى. The male is not like the female, but in this context, لَيْسَ الذَّكَرُ. This, any male is not the equivalent to this female. She is above any male child you could have had. She is excellent. She is pious to a very high degree. So the mother is then dedicating a child who is valuable. So if you want to dedicate someone for the service of Allah, dedicate someone who is dear to you, who is capable, who is able, and make them Hafiz al-Quran. Make them a scholar of Islam. And then make them a scientist as well, or a doctor as well, or an engineer as well, whatever you wish. There's no limit to how much knowledge can be acquired. But don't give the leftovers for Allah. Don't give something you are not attached to. Give the best of what you have for the sake of Allah. وَفِي أَمْوَالِهِمْ حَقٌّ لِلسَّائِلِ وَالْمَحْرُومِ. You see the zakat, always this obligation that there is always a prescribed share in your wealth for the sake of Allah. And now we see here these services like the NHS, for example. These are very good modern methods of implementing these social principles of social justice, which Islam was already instigating 1400 years ago. The concept of the Baytul Mal, that there would be a repository where everyone would contribute and those in need would benefit. What an excellent initiative, that everyone should put some money in and you have a Baytul Mal and the people who need will receive from it. Everyone puts in and some people receive. And this is the concept we have the NHS, for example, here. That everyone contributes and the people in need take from it. And we see in our countries how when someone falls sick in a family, the entire family and generations to come are basically confined to poverty after that, because they're busy paying off the debts for these medical bills. Whereas here, somebody has a life-threatening illness and they receive care year upon year, and it doesn't affect their financial situation at all. Everybody is giving a little when they have something. So we should look for these kind of initiatives, the modern systems that we can instigate, implement, things that we can do. Obviously people are helping with food banks nowadays, all of these kind of things, but any systems that we can set up where everyone contributes a little from what they have, but the people in need are taken care of. It's a safety cushion. This is before the minimum wage. This is before people talked about the poverty line. Before we had all these measures, the retail price index and the cost of living and all of these things, we didn't have all these, but Islam already had set aside concept of zakat, 2.5% of the wealth that you have, which you have not used for 1 year, which is surplus to your requirements. That is the right of the poor. Islam had already prescribed this. And when it was followed to the letter, and we saw times when there was no one to take the zakat because everyone's need had been fulfilled. You see how Islam had already implemented this system of social justice. This is part of our religion. Our religion is not just about piety and worshipping God, it's about helping people. And this is a very important part of our religion. Just excuse me one moment. There's some announcements from the security guard here.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers. I've just got a few points that I need to make everybody vigilant about. I need you all to be more vigilant now. The fasting is over. So please be aware of people, packages and so forth. If you see anything out of the ordinary, please report it. So if you see anything out of the ordinary, please report it to the security straight away. The other thing I'll ask you is, can you not bring bags to the mosque? So anything bigger than a rucksack, can you not bring it to the mosque, please? Bikes. I have a bicycle outside with a massive package on the back of it. Why? I don't know. So there's things that we need to be aware of. Last week, a brother found a rucksack outside. He decided to bring it inside. If you find a package or a parcel, do not touch it. Report it to us straight away. Straight away, please. So if you see it, report it. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah khair. Really, I think we all should thank all the staff here who are doing such an excellent job. And they, obviously, many of these people have lay people like ourselves, but they've taken on this massive responsibility in these times to keep us safe, and we should all help them as much as possible. May Allah Ta'ala keep everyone safe, not only in this masjid, but all the masajid and all the places of worship, and indeed all of our civil society. May Allah Ta'ala keep all of the civilians and all the people who are striving for peace. May He keep them all safe and provide them with these places of security in which they can worship His name in peace and sanctuary. So briefly then, in the time left, Surat Al-Dahr, 76th chapter of the Quran. Here, if we turn to verses 8 and 9, again, we see a description of Jannah. Just like we had before, a description of Jannah. And right in the middle of it, some behavior, which makes them entitled to Jannah. So here, he says, هَلْ أَتَىٰ عَلَى الْإِنسَانِ حِينٌ مِنَ الدَّهْرِ لَمْ يَكُنْ شَيْئًا مَذْكُورًا. This verses like this, they make me shiver when I hear this. There has passed over man a time, حِينٌ مِنَ الدَّهْرِ, a moment of time, لَمْ يَكُنْ شَيْئًا مَذْكُورًا. He was something unmentionable. Really puts you in your place, doesn't it? Man who thinks that he is so great and he is ruling this earth, he thinks, which he is custodian of for a short time. And then Allah Ta'ala explained, إِنَّا خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ مِن نُطْفَةٍ أَمْشَاجٍ. We are the ones who created man from a drop emitted, or a drop mixed. And نَبْتَلِيهِ فَجَعَلْنَاهُ سَمِيعًا بَصِيرًا, so that we might try him. And so we made him hearing and seeing. We are the one who gave him senses. He was nothing but a drop. He was something unmentionable. We are the one who gave him these senses. And then we guided him. إِنَّا هَدَيْنَاهُ السَّبِيلَ إِمَّا شَاكِرًا وَإِمَّا كَفُورًا. We guided him to the path, will he either be grateful or will he be ungrateful or deny? And then it mentions one verse only, إِنَّا أَعْتَدْنَا لِلْكَافِرِينَ سَلَاسَ وَأَغْلَالًا وَسَعِيرًا. What Allah has prepared of Jahannam and chains for the people of disbelief. That's mentioned in one verse. There's an imbalance according to emphasis in the Quran. When he wants the people who are disbelieving to pay attention, he mentions more about Nar. When he wants the people of Jannah to receive more motivation for their actions, he talks more about Jannah. But the balance is there, the two are there side by side. Only one verse about Jahannam. Then, a lot about Jannah. How much? Half a page here. I'm still reading all down the next page. 1.5 pages about Jannah. One verse about Jahannam. So the message is motivational here. إِنَّ الْأَبْرَارَ يَشْرَبُونَ مِنْ كَأْسٍ كَانَ مِزَاجُهَا كَافُورًا. So the abrar, the virtuous will be yashrabun, drinking. There they were akhidin, taking. Here they are drinking. There we have springs. Here they have drink. So again, the same sense of hospitality, abundance, vitality and life is mentioned here. عَيْنًا يَشْرَبُ بِهَا عِبَادُ اللَّهِ. Again, ayn, the springing of water. عَيْنًا يَشْرَبُ بِهَا عِبَادُ اللَّهِ يُفَجِّرُونَهَا تَفْجِيرًا. This will be springing for them. يُوفُونَ بِالنَّذْرِ. This is a mention now of their behavior. After what they have, this is a mention of behavior. يُوفُونَ بِالنَّذْرِ. They fulfilled their vows. وَيَخَافُونَ يَوْمًا كَانَ شَرُّهُ مُسْتَطِيرًا. And they feared a day whose evil repercussions are widespread. So they believed in the Day of Judgment, they prepared for the Day of Judgment. How? What was the behavior that they did? Allah, He says, وَيُطْعِمُونَ الطَّعَامَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ مِسْكِينًا وَيَتِيمًا وَأَسِيرًا. He dedicates 2 verses in this description to describing their generosity and their social assistance. They used to feed, وَيُطْعِمُونَ الطَّعَامَ, food عَلَى حُبِّهِ, despite their love for it, despite their need for it, despite their own need, their own attachment. That's what I was saying to you about giving from what you are attached to. Ala hubbihi, despite your love for that thing. Find something you love and give it for the sake of Allah. Ala hubbihi, despite their love, they used to give food. And some people said here that this is not literal. It doesn't only mean food, it means everything to do with living. Everything that people need to live, including, for example, medical assistance, clothing, anything that they need. إِنَّمَا نُطْعِمُكُمْ لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ. Sorry. Who did they feed? Miskinan wa yatiman wa asira. Those who were needy because they didn't have enough resources. Those who were yatim, so they didn't have parents to look after them and care for them. And those who were asir, who were captives. So they were removed, displaced from their own families, their own wealth. They were now dependent. So once they become dependent, they become a community responsibility. You see, all of these people are people who don't have their own source of reliance. So most children rely on their parents. Most people rely on their wealth. But here these people have somehow become isolated, become dependent, whether it is from their parents or from their wealth or from their community, even the captives, the prisoners. And they become dependent. As soon as they become dependent, they are a communal responsibility. Now everyone has to fulfill that responsibility. And this becomes service in the path of Allah now. Because this is on behalf of Allah, the community is now discharging the responsibility to feed them and to care for them now. إِنَّمَا نُطْعِمُكُمْ لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ. We only feed you for the sake of Allah. لَا نُرِيدُ مِنْكُمْ جَزَاءً وَلَا شُكُورًا. We don't require any reward or any thanks from you. All of this is just done for the sake of Allah. إِنَّا نَخَافُ مِنْ رَبِّنَا يَوْمًا عَبُوسًا قَمْطَرِيرًا. We fear a very severe day from our Lord. فَوَقَاهُمُ اللَّهُ شَرَّ ذَلِكَ الْيَوْمِ وَلَقَّاهُمْ نَظْرَةً وَسُرُورًا. So Allah will save them from the torment of that day and will grant them, it says here, freshness of face and joy of heart. So it will be peaceful in their heart and peace will show on their face. So the troubles which they took away from people in this world, people who are afflicted in this world, they took away their troubles. On the day of troubles, Allah will take away their troubles and they will be at peace. Imagine when someone is needy here and you fulfill their need and they become peaceful because they're no longer in distress. That will be your state on the Day of Judgment. That will be your state in Jannah. When Allah will give you things and He will take away your troubles and then you will be at peace. You will be free of distress. So Allah will repay you. So it says here, don't look for reward from people, look for your reward from Allah. So So may Allah Ta'ala give us tawfiq to look for opportunities wherever we can to help people, whether it is with medical assistance, whether it is with food banks, or whether it is with providing shelter for the homeless. Anything that we can do, counseling services, anything that we can help to set up, to fund, to support, let us try to strive hard for those things. And in verse 22 of this surah, Allah Ta'ala says, "Inna hadha kana lakum jaza'an wa kana sa'yukum mashkura." All of this, 1.5 pages of the description of Jannah, inna hadha, all of this is kana lakum jaza'an, is your reward. Wa kana sa'yukum mashkura. Your striving is appreciated. That's what we all have to pray for, that sa'i, the striving that we do in this earth, is acceptable before Allah and earns His pleasure. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت سيدنا محمد الوسيلة والفضيلة والدرجة الرفيعة وبأس مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته وارزقنا شفاعة يوم القيامة إنك لا تخلف الميعاد برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ونبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم.
Please pray your sunnah. Please move forward, fill the gaps, stand shoulder to shoulder, and please switch off your phones. Thank you. Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Eid Mubarak. Jummah Mubarak, but Eid Mubarak as well. MashaAllah. Alhamdulillah, brothers and sisters, whole month of Ramadan in your central masjid was activities, and we make dua for all those brothers, sisters, families who work hard and donated for this masjid, and especially those volunteer sisters. And on behalf of our community, as the Imam of our central mosque, I make dua for all those. And today I request you please make dua for our well-respected brothers who are in suffering. So Allah Ta'ala उनकी मुश्किल आसान फरमाए. और दुआ का दिन है, हम आप सब के लिए, आप हमारे लिए, हम एक दूसरे के लिए दुआ करते हैं इस यकीन के साथ कि अल्लाह ताला हमारी दुआओं को कबूल फरमाता है. Especially because the whole month of Ramadan, our management and volunteer and the donor, and I think they work hard. We should appreciate and make dua for them as well. Allah Ta'ala हम सब पे करम फरमाए और खैर व आफियत फरमाए. और जो इस दुनिया से रमज़ान शरीफ में और इससे पहले चले गए उनके लिए दुआ करनी है. जो बीमार हैं अल्लाह ताला उनको सेहत कामिला नसीब फरमाए. So for announcement, our General Secretary जनाब जहांगीर चौधरी साहब.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Respected all, just a few quick announcement. The last Jummah collection was £6,613.56. Jazakumullah khair. That's a very generous of you. May Allah reward you higher and continue to donate. I would like to announce these figures every Friday. Secondly, those brothers who have made pledges during the month of Ramadan, please do make the payment. I think Brother Tufal is trying to contact them. If you haven't given your contact details, whatever amount you have pledged, please come and make the payment in the general office. The 7 weeks course, Juz Amma, will start inshallah on 18th of June 2019 between 7:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. and that's open for all brother and sister age 15 plus. The fees is only £30 and the course material is provided. I urge every single one of you try and attend all these courses. They are very useful. It was very successful. That's why this course is restarting again. Similarly, the course which is funeral rites, that's another very useful course. Inshallah, we will do that again. And lastly, again, we had a very useful meeting with the Harrow Council, head of Harrow Council and some head of police departments in relation to the securities. One of the things which I kept announcing, and they have told us we need to keep announcing every Friday, please use the pelican or pedestrian crossing when you're crossing. Don't cross from the road, you're risking your life. We are doing our duty to make these announcements. Inshallah, soon we will put these notices up. We cannot stop you, but we can request you. Even today, I know some of the elderly people, they were crossing, it's a wet road. Not everybody who drives is a Muslim, not everybody who drives is a gentleman. So you need one person and that's it. And even the police were standing today, they witnessed themselves, so they can see how obedient we are. So if we are applying for all these permissions, making all these requests to the council, they're observing us, they got CCTV, they can see if we are the nation who listens to them. We are planning to implement some security measures for the doors, for the scanning devices, also the wall outside near the footpath, but we have to go through a process. Which inshallah will do. So what the other thing they have announced, told us to announce, the council have zero funding towards these facilities, although there was the funding previously, but now there are zero funding for any of these facilities, such as the security, for the doors, for the scanning and the walls outside. They will help us to get the permission, but they said we need to make these regular announcements. Any brothers who deal with the security devices, such as the door security system, such as the scanning devices, also the builders near the time, if they can contact us, and perhaps they can do a good discounted price for the masjid. Jazakumullah khair. Will wait for the bucket to finish and I'll pass the mic.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
الحمد لله رب العالمين خالق الأرض والسماوات هو الذي يصورنا في الأرحام كيف يشاء أحمده حمدا كثيرا وأشكره شكرا جميلا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم قال الله تبارك وتعالى في القرآن المجيد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الأبرار يشربون من كأس كان مزاجها كافورا عينا يشرب بها عباد الله يفجرونها تفجيرا يوفون بالنذر ويخافون يوما كان شره مستطيرا ويطعمون الطعام على حبه مسكينا ويتيما وأسيرا إنما نطعمكم لوجه الله لا نريد منكم جزاء ولا شكورا إنا نخاف من ربنا يوما عبوسا قمطريرا. بارك الله لنا ولكم بالقرآن العظيم ونفعنا وإياكم بالآيات وذكر الحكيم إنه تعالى جواد كريم ملك بر رؤوف رحيم ورب حليم. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله بالحق بشيرا ونذيرا بين يدي الساعة. من يطع الله ورسوله فقد رشد واهتدى ومن يعصهما فإنه لا يضر إلا نفسه ولا يضر الله شيئا. أما بعد فيا أيها الناس اتقوا الله العظيم كما أمر وانتهوا عما نهاكم عنه وزجر. قال الله تبارك وتعالى في القرآن المجيد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد عدد من صلى وصام وعدد من قعد وقام صلى الله عليه وعلى جميع الأنبياء خير البشر وملائكته المقربين والخلفاء الراشدين خصوصا على خير البشر بعد الأنبياء بالتحقيق أمير المؤمنين سيدنا أبي بكر الصديق رضي الله تعالى عنه وعلى مزين المنبر والمحراب الناطق بالصواب أمير المؤمنين سيدنا عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله تعالى عنه وعلى جامع الآيات القرآن كامل الحياء والإيمان أمير المؤمنين سيدنا عثمان بن عفان رضي الله تعالى عنه وعلى أسد الله الغالب مظهر الأجائب والغرائب أمير المؤمنين سيدنا علي بن أبي طالب رضي الله تعالى عنه وكرم الله وجهه وعلى الإمامين الهمامين السعيدين الشهيدين أبي محمد الحسن وأبي عبد الله الحسين رضي الله تعالى عنهما وعلى أمهما سيدة النساء فاطمة الزهراء رضي الله تعالى عنها وعلى عميه المكرمين عند الله والناس سيدنا أبي أمارة الحمزة وسيدنا أبي الفضل الأباس رضي الله تعالى عنهما وعلى الستة الباقية من العشرة المبشرة وسائر المهاجرين والأنصار والذين اتبعوهم بإحسان والتابعين الأخيار وأولياء أمته الأبرار إلى يوم القرار رضوان الله تعالى عليهم أجمعين. اللهم اغفر لنا ولوالدينا ولأساتذتنا ولمشايخنا ولجميع المؤمنين والمؤمنات إنك سميع قريب مجيب الدعوات. اللهم اعز الإسلام والمسلمين بالإمام العادل ناصر الإسلام والملة والدين. اللهم انصر من نصر دين سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وجعلنا منهم، واخذل من خذل دين سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ولا تجعلنا منهم. عباد الله رحمكم الله، إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. واذكروا الله يذكركم وادعوه يستجب لكم، ولذكر الله تعالى أعلى وأولى وأعز وأجل وأهم وأتم وأكبر، والله يعلم ما تصنعون.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله، أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي للصلاة حي للصلاة حي للفلاح حي للفلاح. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله.
Please stand shoulder to shoulder, fill all the gaps, and please ensure that all mobile phones are switched off. Jazakumullah. Allahu Akbar. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahmanir Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو، عالم الغيب والشهادة، هو الرحمن الرحيم. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو، الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر. سبحان الله عما يشركون. هو الله الخالق البارئ المصور، له الأسماء الحسنى، يسبح له ما في السماوات والأرض، وهو العزيز الحكيم. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الرحمن الرحيم، مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. لإيلاف قريش إيلافهم رحلة الشتاء والصيف فليعبدوا رب هذا البيت الذي أطعمهم من جوع وآمنهم من خوف. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله. الله محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وأدخلنا الجنة مع الأبرار يا عزيز يا غفار يا رب العالمين. اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا وإيمانا كاملا وعملا مقبولا ويقينا صادقا وقلبا خاشعا ولسانا ذاكرا ورزقا واسعا حلالا طيبا يا الله وشفاء من كل داء وتوبة نصوحا وتوبة قبل الموت وراحة عند الموت والعفو عند الحساب والفوز بالجنة والنجاة من النار. اللهم أجرنا من النار يا مجير يا مجير يا مجير. اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا يا كريم فاعف عنا يا غفور فاعف عنا يا رحيم يا أكرم الأكرمين يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم أعتق رقابنا ورقاب آبائنا من النار. اللهم اغفر لأمة سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. Oh Allah, we ask that you accept our Salatul Jummah. Ya Allah, we ask that you bless all the people who are gathered in this congregation, bless their families, give barakah in their homes, protect their loved ones, Ya Allah. Give ease to all those who are in trouble, give relief to all those who are afflicted with any form of hardship or trouble. Ya Allah, give cure to all those who are sick. Ya Allah, protect our elderly and weak. Ya Allah, protect our mothers and our sisters. Ya Allah, protect our fathers and our brothers. Ya Allah, protect the children around the world. Ya Allah, protect all those who are victims of poverty and victims of war around the world. Ya Allah, grant us peace in our time, peace and stability, Ya Allah. آمين آمين يا رب العالمين. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله.